Hello, hello, hello. I love when I do a RuPaul introduction with the three hellos. All right, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Charles Liu, and I proudly serve as the Associate Dean for the Center for Diversity and Inclusion here at Hopkins. The title for this session is Stay in the Deep End, a personal leadership toolkit for success in college and beyond. The very fact that I stand before you here as a university leader at Hopkins and introducing a session on leadership, to be very honest with you all, defies the odds. When I was a kid, I was so shy that I would cry when approached by others. And it's a trait that, quite frankly, as an introvert, still happens every now and then in my adult life. I am also the son of an immigrant family, learning English only when I turned 6 years old. As someone who struggled to speak out and would cry whenever I was spoken to, my parents had genuine apprehensions and hesitations about my prospects to be successful here in America. So at one point, it actually got so bad that my parents considered moving us back to Taiwan for a brief moment, but only really for a brief moment, because deep down, they knew that it was vital for them and for me to stay in the deep end because we would come out better on the other side. As mentioned, I'm proud to be from an immigrant family. I'm also proud to be a first-generation college graduate, so my first-gen college students in the room, shout out to y'all. And I encountered my first truly diverse learning environment and community sitting in a session like this at the University of Texas at Austin 20 years ago. For me, coming to college was the first time in my life that I was able to take the classes that I wanted to take, where I met other students from across the US and the world, where I got to vote in my first election, which is also coming up, and where I encountered people who simultaneously enhanced and challenged my beliefs. Growing up, my dad used to tell me, if everyone in your room looks like you and thinks like you, then you're in the wrong room. But at the same time, I also know that it can be of comfort to share similar experiences and identities with others in the room. And that's why our center, the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, puts on over 20 programs and events throughout the year that are open to everyone on campus. And we are also the category coordinators for over 80 identity and faith-based student organizations. So, with that being said, regardless of what type of room you may be looking for, just know that there's always a room for you here at Hopkins. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for this session, Coach Daron K. Roberts. I first met Coach Roberts at a launch event for the Center for Sports Leadership and Innovation a decade ago at the University of Texas at Austin. In addition to being a seasoned speaker, delivering 450 keynote speeches to universities, and real quick, this is his 450th, so please give him a huge round of applause when he comes out. Woo! So in addition to being a seasoned speaker delivering 450 keynote speeches to universities, Fortune 100 companies, pro and college sports teams, and industry associations, Daron is a #1 voice on LinkedIn, best-selling author, which, by the way, if you look at the books that you've been handed have been signed. He literally signed 1,300 copies of books this morning, starting at 8:30, and he actually signed them. I was here to witness it. So he's a best-selling author, he's an entrepreneur, he's an angel investor, and of course, he's also a former pro football coach. Coach Roberts has been featured in ESPN The Magazine, Bloomberg Businessweek, Sports Illustrated, is a contributor to Forbes.com, and his op-eds have been featured in Fortune, CNN, and Time. On a voluntary basis, Coach Roberts serves on the South by Southwest Sports Advisory Commission and Coca-Cola Foundation Board. And not only that, he and his wife have 5 children and reside in Austin, Texas. So without further ado, please help me welcome to the stage, Coach Daron K. Roberts.
Thank you. Okay, listen. First of all, I know you can't read cursive, so you probably don't even care that the books are signed, but there were 1,300 of them, and Dr. Liu's team was so generous and kind with their time to distribute them. So I want you just to give it up, clap for them, for his team. Okay, this is gonna be fast and furious, and then we're gonna get to questions. All right. Born in Mount Pleasant, Texas. We got any Texans here? There we go. Admissions folks are doing a good job. Okay, I like it. Population 12,291 in Mount Pleasant, Texas. My dad grew up in a town called Carthage, Texas. Population 6,923. My dad takes me to the church where he grew up, and he walks me behind the church. There in the cemetery, there's a tombstone that reads, Deacon Bill Roberts, born 1842, died 1912, blessed be his name. So my dad puts me in the truck, we drive back home. He takes out a surveyor's map from the year 1870, and that same name, Bill Roberts, is etched on a plot of land 160 acres in size. So the state of Texas in 1870 sent surveyors out to determine who owned what, and Bill Roberts, former enslaved man, only 5 years removed from the end of the Civil War, accumulates 160 acres. My dad says, he's the reason why you will never have any excuses. What do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Now, I was 7. So I did what 7-year-olds do, which is begin to predict what were the titles and the professions that would impress my dad. So I ran down the list in my mind, you know, engineer and doctor and lawyer. So I picked lawyer. He says, great. He goes, but you should aim bigger. I'm like, my God. I'm still carrying Lunchables to school every day. Give me a break. I said, Dad, I want to be governor by age 40, right? Now, fast forward, I get into high school. I write in my journal my junior year, I still have the entry. Attend the University of Texas, get elected student body president, attend Harvard Law School, practice in Houston for 5 years, practice back home for 3 years, run for the state senate, run for the governor's mansion, age 40. I mean, look, I had this thing mapped out. I had already picked out the color for the carpets. I graduate, I get to the University of Texas, my senior year, I'm elected student body. There are 50,512 students, the largest student body in the country. I check off the list. Number 2, I apply to Harvard Law School. I don't get accepted. I don't get rejected. What's in the middle? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, the dreaded wait list. Let me paraphrase the letter. Raise your hand if you've been waitlisted. It's okay. Let me paraphrase the letter. Dear Daron, we like you. Daron, the reality is that we like so many more applicants more than we like you. Now, Daron, if you have any viable options for law school, we highly advise you to take advantage of them. On the off occasion that we reach back out to you, we hope that you will keep us in consideration. With love, Joyce P. Curl, Dean of Admissions. Listen, folks, I was distraught, walking around in sackcloth and ashes. My mentor calls me, he says, Daron, I have a job for you. You're going to work for Senator Joe Lieberman in D.C. It's a Thursday. I jump on a Greyhound bus from Austin, Texas. I get to Union Station in D.C. I don't want to be there. So here's one point. I want you to take out your notes and paper. I know you're studious folks. Here's one note I want you to just keep up, all right? Keep account of this one. I want you to grow through what you go through. It sounds like something cheesy that may have been up on the walls of your elementary school. But here's the one thing I know, that there are adults, and this is something that we learned in a post-2020 world. There is courage in just continuing to go on. Forget about GPA and the metrics and outscoring and what schools to get into and what offers. But just continuing to survive and push on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of merit in that. So I get to DC, I don't want to be there. It's June of 2001. Fast forward to September 11th. On September the 10th, I'm working on education bills. September the 12th, I'm working on national security bills. Now, I am in a place where I don't want to be. My vision of Daron's life involved me in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the fall of 2001. But I found myself in DC, and I learned more than I could about public policy, government, crisis management than I could anywhere else in the world. I'm still reapplying to Harvard Law School. Year number 2, wait list. So I attend the Kennedy School of Government. Year number 3, wait list. Year 4, wait list. This is where my mom gets involved. Mama calls me. Hey, honey, Daron, yeah, why don't you just go to law school, son, somewhere else? They don't want you. I said, Mom, 38 years, elementary school principal. I said, Mom, you walk into your school, you've got all these signs up on the wall, reach for the stars, keep your face to the sunshine, you can do it. She said, yeah, honey, that's what we tell little people. You're an adult now, and you're not getting any younger. Remember this as well. At several points in your life, you will have people around you trying to remind you of what age you are and what you should be doing at said age. Ignore them and keep going. So I said, Mom, I've got one last chance. If this doesn't work out, I'll go somewhere else. 2 days before the fall semester starts, right? So you got started on the 28th. Like the 26th of August, the dean of admission calls me and she says, Daron, I have one last seat. Would you take it? I'm not bitter. Yes. Plan's back on track. So I'm going through Harvard Law School, doing what Harvard Law School students do, which is read, sleep, read some more, and work at law firms in the summer. A buddy of mine calls me up and he says, hey, I'm going to work a football camp. Won't you come with me? So we go up to South Carolina. We got any South Carolinians in the house? Oh, there we go. We gotta have more than one. Is you? Hold it down. So, Columbia, South Carolina, Steve Spurrier football camp. I go with him to the camp. Steve Spurrier walks up. He says, hey, one of our volunteer coaches didn't show up. Can anyone fill in for him? So I'm looking around thinking to myself, I played football in Texas. I raised my hand. He says, what's your name? Daron Roberts. He says, where do you coach? The problem was I wasn't a coach. So I said, Mount Pleasant High School. He said, excellent. You've got Group 6. I had no clue what the heck this man's talking about. Group 6 consisted of 60 sixth graders, none of whom had any athletic talent whatsoever. They had a coach who could not coach. I went to academy the night before. I bought a bucket hat, some sunglasses, a whistle, and a stopwatch. For 3 days, I coached these kids. And I noticed something. It was the first time in my life that I didn't have to set my alarm clock to get up. So I want you to write this down, type it into your notes, whatever you do, tattoo it on your forehead. Keep noticing what lights you up. What lights you up? What lights you up? What lights you up? At different junctures in your life, keep asking yourself, what lights you up? I get back to Logan Airport. I walk up to a payphone. This is a machine. You put a quarter into it. Have y'all seen these things? You put a quarter in and you dial 10 numbers, pick it up. Mom picks up. I said, Mom, I'm going to be a football coach. He said, let me put your dad on the phone. Dad gets on the phone. Son, what's this I hear about you being a football coach? I said, Dad, I work this camp. I'm going to coach. He said, uh-huh. He said, son, do you know how much debt you're in? Grad school, 2 years, law school, 3 years, $50K per year. You don't have to be a super quant, AP Calculus 5 score. That's $250,000 pre-interest. My dad said, hey, look, son, now the deal was we would pay for undergrad, but you're on the hook for grad and law school. I said, Dad, I was fortunate to get a full academic ride to the University of Texas, so by my very crude accounting, it appears that you and Mom owe me around $68,427.92. School was cheap then. My dad said, well, being the Baptist minister that he is, he said, well, let's pray. So we pray over the phone. I don't know who he was praying to. All I know is I have yet to see a check. I go back to law school, I'm going to graduate, I write a letter to every team in the NFL. There are 32 of them, 31 of them said no. I get one yes from Herm Edwards, head football coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. He says, I'll let you be a training camp intern. I'm not going to pay you, you won't have any benefits, and you're going to work 18-hour days. I said, sign me up. I graduated on June the 6th, 2007. I walk across the stage like this. I take my diploma from Elena Kagan, who was our dean at the time. I exit stage right, have a dinner with my parents, and I drive from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm the grunt. If you need barbecue sandwiches, I'm the guy you call. I slept in Arrowhead Stadium, and at the end of the season, Herm offered me a full-time gig. So 2 years in Kansas City, 2 years with the Detroit Lions. Are there any Lions fans randomly? I just always have to. Okay, that's good. This is a good crowd. Admissions is doing their job. 2 years with the West Virginia Mountaineers. Last year with America's team, the Cleveland Browns. And I stopped coaching after the day we got fired. I went home, and my son comes into the kitchen. He was 3, and I am scrambling eggs, and he says, you eat breakfast? So I did what any good father would do. I ignored the kid, and I just keep scrambling. Persistent fella, byproduct of a Montessori school. He comes back. You, breakfast. So I turned to my wife and I said, is there something wrong with him? My wife grew up on a ranch in Leavenworth, Kansas, never one to pull punches. She asked me, when was the last time you had breakfast with Dylan? And the irony hit me that I've been spending all of my time with other people's sons, and my own son didn't know me. So I went to the University of Texas, started a Center for Sports Leadership and Innovation, where I had the pleasure to meet Dr. Liu, work with professional athletes to help them transition into civilian life. I just have a few points for you as you embark on this period of your lives. Number one, I want you to be open. I want you to be open. Empathy, it's a sexy word, right? Brene Brown made it sexy. It's an old concept. Empathy. The courage to take the perspective of someone else, to get into someone else's shoes. Not to be confused with agreement. To take someone else's perspective. If you look at what ails our society, at the core of it are people who are unwilling, who lack the courage to just take the perspective of someone else. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to go to the same church. You don't have to be from the same side of the tracks. Your parents don't have to shop at the same types of grocery stores, but just to take the perspective. So what I want to encourage you, as you're having meals and breaking bread and in classrooms and walking across streets and in parks, I want you to practice this empathy. And the thing about empathy is this. On one end of the empathy scale is inaction. In the middle sits empathy, but at the far end is advocacy. And so for those of you who are moved by what you hear and you see from the folks around you, right? Advocate. So I want you to be open. Number two, I want you to be where your feet are. I want you to be present. Look, this year is going to be unlike anything that you've ever experienced. It's going to be one of the best periods of your life. And I promise you, when you're an old person like me, you're going to look back and wish you'd slow down. In every space that you inhabit while you're on this campus, try to feel your feet as you're living in the moment. What oftentimes happens is we're talking to someone, but we're thinking about what's the next calendar entry, the assignment that is due, the text we haven't answered, and when was the last time that we checked TikTok. So we're talking and we're mimicking that we hear, but we're not there. We're not there. So I encourage you, right, to be where your feet are. Last point, be you. Look, I came from a small rural town in East Texas, and I thought that when I went to the Kennedy School of Government or when I went to Harvard Law School, I had to be somebody else. We talk about authenticity. Be you. Bring who you are to the table. It doesn't mean you can't change. It doesn't mean you can't change, but I promise you, some of you are thinking like I thought, sitting in this chair, that you know what, maybe the other kid has had more preparation. Maybe they're smarter than I am. Maybe they know more. I promise you at the end of this experience, you're gonna find out that by and large, we're here. There may be some different gifts and talents, but you have some special traits and some talents and gifts that only you have. The universe and the genetic soup have given to you. I want you to bring those to the forefront. Thank you so much, Hopkins. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the next stage. Stay in the deep end. Thank you, brother. Thank you, thank you. All right. And for those of you who are fake reading, I know you're not reading that book now. You're just holding it up. Stop it. Stop it.
All right, mic check. There we go. I'm just gonna hold it like this. All right, so how's it going, y'all? It's good to see y'all. So quick confession time. I started my career as a middle school science teacher. So I worked with 12-year-olds day in and day out. And what I found though, especially transitioning to work with college students and older adults, is that it doesn't matter whether you're 12 or 22, people's attention spans are basically around the same. Which is why that we have structured this into 3 parts. The first part was just Daron actually speaking with you all. This is the second part where we're gonna have a brief fireside chat, also introducing some of our student leaders here at Hopkins. And then the third part is an open Q&A with you all. So on the screen, you will see a QR code. Please go ahead and use that. If you scan it, you can actually send in questions. We've already seen a few come through. And then towards the end of the session, we're gonna have someone facilitate those questions that you all asked directly to Coach Roberts. Cool? So with this, like I mentioned, this is the second part, which is the fireside chat. We're gonna go ahead and have some of our student leaders introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about them, and then we'll have some questions for Daron that he's gonna answer for us. So we're gonna go ahead and start here with Will.
Hey everyone, I'm Will. I'm a senior from Columbia, Maryland. I'm studying chemical and biomolecular engineering. I'm a member of the men's basketball team here on campus, and this year I'm the president of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. So if you see me around, say hi and come to some games.
Nice.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Isabella. My pronouns are she, her, and I am from Guatemala, a sophomore majoring in public health studies and political science. One of the student organizations that I'm involved with on campus is ISA, International Students at Hopkins, and we're under the Office of Multicultural Affairs, also known as OMA. You'll learn a lot of acronyms here on campus, but I think those two are the most important ones, in my opinion. So I'm involved with ISA through, we last week had our pre-orientation. So shout out to all of our mentees here. It was nice to meet you, and I know we have a great cohort of international students. And other than that, I'm also a director for the Professional Development Committee there. So we hope to see international students as well as globally conscious students being involved in our events, and also at the offices of the Center of Diversity and Inclusion.
Hi everyone, my name is Bersabi. I am a junior majoring in public health. For me, home is Virginia, and I'm involved in a few organizations here at Hopkins, such as Ethiopian Eritrean Student Association, Hopkins Community Connections, and Multicultural Leadership Council. And so with MLC, we facilitate a space for multicultural student organizations to be able to share any questions or concerns with the way that they go with their organizations and their groups. And so we want to be able to advertise certain things for them, help them with funding, and just give them a certain space to feel supported by the Hopkins community and to be able to bring more engagement and involvement in their organizations. So come by the Center for Diversity and Inclusion office located in Homewood Apartments. And so we would like to see you around and see if you can have any questions or concerns that you want to bring about to the Hopkins community and your orgs.
Thank you. All right, so Daron, I got the first question.
Yes.
So this is your 450th keynote. You've talked to Fortune 100 companies, universities, pro college sports teams, the whole gamut. So out of all the different topics that you could have talked about, you titled this session Stay in the Deep End. Why?
So yeah, this question around why would I title this Stay in the Deep End? A plague that I believe folks both young and old, middle age, it runs the gamut, that I think is really hurting our society and our families is complacency. And this is something that 2020 tried to lay bare. 2020 tried to get us to all stop and evaluate where we were in our homes, in our professions. It forced us to shut it down. And I know that you know this better than I, right? And a lot of us made promises of how we were going to change when things got back to normal. But humans have a tendency to revert back to the status quo. And our brain wants to maintain homeostasis. So the reason why I entitled this Stay in the Deep End is because the most fulfilled people that I know and that I see and engage with are the ones who are constantly challenging themselves to be better than they were yesterday and to re-envision, they're constantly reinventing themselves. And I think that keeps life interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Daron, my question for you is, you've done a lot. This is your 450th keynote, but you attended Harvard Law, you're an NFL coach, you span many industries, you talk to many people. What's a common theme or a common thread that you think stays true no matter where you've been?
Of people that I've dealt with.
People, groups, industries.
Yeah. One of the things I oftentimes get asked, this is a great question, the best leaders that I know are humble, which seems, it may seem incongruous with the way that we view competency, because we think best and we think skills and knowledge and intellect. The best leaders that I've seen, and regardless of sector, the best ones are humble enough to know where their blind spots are and either gain the knowledge to feel it, or they surround themselves with people who have the expertise. And I was surprised as I sat and thought about it. I said, you know what? Elite people, they're not overly confident to the point to where they don't surround themselves with good people.
Oh, well, my question, coming from a perspective of like an international student who might have their family away from, be away from home, we know that juggling family and career can be tough. Can you tell us more about how your family has shaped your career in life?
Yes, and let me talk back to the freshman Daron right now. One of the big regrets from my freshman year, well, from my college years, is that my grandmother would call me every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Now, this was during the age of landlines. Have you seen these things? There were these wires going into the wall. And I had this thing called what do they call it? Like a voice machine. A little tape, and it would record her voice. And I would be lying in bed, and I could hear my grandmother checking in on me. And I am honest when I say I probably picked up 1 out of 5 times. I still have those tapes. She's no longer with us. I wish I had carved out more time for the people back home. And I know it's tough, right? You're juggling labs and schedules and exam dates and studying. Even if it's just a quick check-in or a quick 5-minute conversation, I wish I had been more intentional about reaching out to the people who meant the most to me back home, even when it's the toughest. And I want to encourage you all to do it, because I know you're going to go on so many different journeys here. Even if it's just a quick text or a 2-minute conversation, like find some way to reach back to those folks. Like that is the stuff that will sustain you here. It will get you through tough times, so carve out time for them. And there's no such thing as work-life balance. It goes back to being present. When I'm with my kids, I have to put my phone away. I leave my phone in the car, so when I'm talking to them, they know that I'm talking with them, right? So I think it's about being present and really capturing the moments even when they're short.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you talk a lot about failure, being rejected from like law school to being rejected from coaching in the NFL. And so how have your failures helped shape your journey?
Yeah, how my failures helped shape me. You know, I tend to look at life as a stats game. Right? So for me, I'm trying to steadily increase the number of attempts such that it's going to give me more opportunities to win. So if I'm going to try to be an NFL coach, I'm not going to write to 8 teams, I'm going to write to all 32. If I am going to, if I want a job in a certain sector, I'm not just going to pick the top 3, I'm going to go all the way down the list. Because to me, you only need 1, right? Like the 1 yes will outweigh the infinite rejections. And I did research on this at the University of Texas. What we found was after you get past the 4th to 5th rejection for something, the brain does a funny thing. It starts to deflate the impact of the next rejection. Because the brain says, wow, the first time you get rejected, you're like, oh, my life is over. I don't know where I go from here. The second rejection, it stings a little less. The third one, the fourth one. Around number 5, the brain says, we're still here. If you can increase your number of rolls at the wheel, it won't be the rejection that you'll remember. It'll be those wins that you notched because you weren't afraid to put your name into the hat. So that would be my my advice for rejection. Give yourself the opportunity to get the 1 yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have the last question. I'm going to wrap up this section. So with us today are 1,300 first-year students who are just starting their college journeys. What is the biggest piece of advice that you have for them as they start their college careers?
You're not going to listen to me. I know that. I was you. I was you. Okay. Oh, that's so good. What's the biggest piece of advice? am going to beg you to slow down. I know that freshman year is typically frenetic. I mean, you're trying to figure out where to go, how to go, where to go, where to eat, how to eat, what not to eat, who to be friends. I get it. The only regret that I have from the 9 years that I spent accumulating degrees is that I did not slow down and enjoy the experience. I spent a lot of time complaining about study hall or study schedules and exam schedules. And so I really want to encourage you to take some time to do some conscious breathing, get outside, and slow down. That's my advice to you.
Sweet. Thank you. So that actually concludes our fireside chat portion with our student leaders. Thank you all. I'm actually going to introduce or welcome to the stage Mr. Joseph Colon from the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. Woo! So throughout this time, hopefully you've gotten a chance to submit some questions. If you still have questions to submit, feel free to go ahead and try, and we will do our best that we can. And I'll go ahead and kick it off to Mr. Colon to ask them the questions that you all have asked.
What's good, people?
I'm ready.
So good. I just want to tell you, we were just talking in the back, and I said, he asked me, what type of student is a Hopkins student? I know you all are new, but my God, you came through with the questions. And I want to say a Hopkins student is an amazing student. So I'm Joseph Colon. I am the Director for Diversity and Inclusion. I've been at Hopkins for over 20 years. I know I look young, right? But I started where you were. No, I'm kidding. So I would like to thank you all of you who submitted questions. You guys really did a great introspection. And just to kind of give a frame, I asked Daron, he asked me, what type of student is a Hopkins student? And I think we found out fairly quickly that it's a studious student who's very in-depth. We had a student who literally was reading the book as they came in, which was amazing. So, all right, y'all ready for the Q&A part? Are you ready?
I don't think so now, after you said all that.
There was some
This is going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
There's some football folks here. I'm going to, filter those out. They said, what happened to the Lions?
God, if I knew that, I wouldn't be here. I'd be making more money than I'm making now.
So, first question out the gate is, what I would say is, what you mentioned in your acknowledgments in your book, the smell of good writing. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Man, I wrote that book 6 years ago. The smell of good writing. No, I know exactly what I meant. So, my 12th grade AP English teacher named Judy Henson, my first paper, when she returned it to me, it looked as if the woman had bled openly on every single page. It was filled with red ink. Judy Henson sat next to me, not across from me, she sat next to me for the next 3 weeks and made me revise the paper. And she said something to me. She said, Daron, you're going to be a great writer as soon as you divorce adverbs. And I looked at this woman like, what in the heck is this woman talking about? Just give me the B+ or whatever and let me go. The day of graduation, she waits for me. She said, Daron, you're going to be a writer. I'm like, no, I'm going to be the governor of Texas. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, Mrs. Henson. Fast forward 20 years. The thing that lights me up, nothing lights me up more than writing. And she would always talk about the smell of words. What she meant was the scent it's that first reaction when you read good writing, right? Like a good sentence or a good opening, or you're going through the climax or the resolution. You know how your belly gets? You're like, that's the physiological nature of writing and reading. She asked me to eulogize her, and I did this at her funeral 2 years ago. And I thought about how she was always talking about, keep sniffing for good words. So that's what I meant. Thank you for whoever asked that question.
Awesome.
You're very detail-oriented, so thank you.
So I think this is a great question to ask. As a black man who has attended one of the most prestigious law schools in the world, what advice do you have for other black students navigating college life at PWIs?
Okay, so PWIs, for those of you who aren't familiar with the acronym, predominantly white institutions. What's my advice for black males? So here's the one thing I will say is that if I think about the way that I was brought up, my parents spent a lot of time preaching to me that I had to be twice as good as other people. And then I realized that a lot of the people that I sat in rooms with were just okay. So the one thing I would say to black males is, don't ever compare yourself against anyone else. Like every day that I wake up, I am the standard. And I think it's easy in American society to look to other visions of people and think of them as the standard. You have to constantly wake up with a renewed sense in the mirror that I am the standard. So I think the mindset is number one. I would say number two, the thing that helped me was that I was in a lot of different organizations, but I always stayed in one organization of black males at the University of Texas where we could close the door and chop it up about what was going on. And that really helped me. It was a safe space for me to be able to communicate, so I would encourage you to do that as well. Appreciate the question. Thank you.
All right, so another question that came through, which is an awesome question, is about living up to your parents' dreams of you becoming a lawyer and kind of walking into your truth. So could you speak a little bit about how do you make those organizational shifts in your life to, suffice it to say that support your parents and their goals and dreams, but also you follow your own path?
Yes. You know, I'm going to say something. I'm not even sure if I hope you take this the right way. I have this sneaky suspicion that as you go throughout life, if you're not disappointing a fair amount of people, then you're not living a life true to yourself. And this is what I mean. My wife and I have 5 kids. So even though we consciously try to not design their lives, we find ourselves predicting what they will become. My parents had a design for Daron's life. And what I really want you to differentiate and really distinguish between these two groups, there is a real difference between people in your corner and people in your circle. Your circle is wide. You don't know most of those people. They may like or not like what you just posted. The circle is wide and impersonal. But there are just a few people that regardless of what time you call or what you just did or what career pivot you're going to take, those people are going to be there for you because they don't care about the profession, they care about your fulfillment. So what I will say is the people who really care about you may be disappointed, but if they're invested in you as the human, they will always circle back around. My grandmother, my mom, and my dad put aside their disappointment that I wasn't a practicing lawyer, and they were at every one of my games. So just keep those people close. Keep those people close.
Awesome.
I feel like I'm in a poetry game.
So who beyond family has been most influential on your perspective in life and in your success story?
I'm going to go back to history. You know, one thing I always think about when I come back to Maryland, Maryland is the birthplace of Thurgood Marshall and Frederick Douglass. Every time I fly into BWI, I think about both of those humans because the first book that I can remember reading was a little small book on the life of Thurgood Marshall that my dad gave to me. So I would say from history, you know, the one writer that has moved me at every period of my life has been James Baldwin. I read The Fire Next Time every January of every year as a reset for me. My other influences in terms of mentors, obviously my parents. I will also say that I'm very fortunate to have a wife who puts up with my shenanigans. I have a partner who I've made several detours while we've been together, and at each detour, she's there to support. She remains agnostic about the thing and supportive of me as a human. So those would be the folks who come to mind.
We got 2 more questions until we let these wonderful people onward to class. No, I'm kidding. It's a little too early for that.
Man, this is late. Ooh, I got 9 classes here?
No. All right, ready? Can you discuss the relationship between vulnerability and courage and how they intersect in leadership and decision making?
Yes, the relationship between vulnerability and courage. So I want to be very clear about vulnerability. We talked about empathy. Vulnerability, it's tough. Because what vulnerability asks you to do is reach down into the core of who you are, unearth the thing that frightens you, that's the toughest for you to communicate, and then bring it back up for other people to see. We are very good maskers, right? We are accustomed to putting on a game face and going out. So vulnerability requires the utmost courage. And the one thing that I want to say is, we talk about empathy and we talk about getting over imposter syndrome or dealing with imposter syndrome or vulnerability. It's a process. So there is no crash course or semester. Like, it's an ongoing process in your life. So just start small, dose by dose, and understand that it's going to take time. But I will tell you that I think the most wholehearted people, I'll echo what Brene Brown says, the most wholehearted people have this appreciation for vulnerability. I must say one thing also. In college, my sophomore year, a mentor told me that I needed to get a therapist. And this is coming from my background. Therapists were not, there was a stigma around them. I've had a therapist since my sophomore year of college for every year of my life up until this day, and this person has made the difference. So I just want to encourage people for those of you, and it doesn't have to be at the point to where you feel overwhelmed or on a low. I think that kind of support is important.
Awesome. Yeah. And last question, as we start our undergrad journey, what is something we should keep with us on this journey?
As you're going along this journey, maintain a willingness to have your beliefs shattered. Like, you're coming from hamlets and boroughs and countries and cities and towns, and up until this point of your existence, all of the social mores and the beliefs and the indoctrinations have filtered into your body, and now you're here in college. And what I will say is this: you will be exposed to some history, you're going to be exposed to some beliefs, some religions that don't jive with the stuff that you learn where you're from. Sit with that. I think that's the beauty of higher education. And we live in a time where a lot of people want to always be comfortable. The great benefit of the American institution of higher education is that it is a place of discomfort and growth. And so I want you, when you're in these tough moments, feel that feeling in your belly, note the uneasiness, right? Note the sweat that's starting to form, and just breathe and sit and be willing to have your beliefs disbanded. Thank you so much for having me, Hopkins. Class of 27, if my math is right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, y'all, can we please give a huge round of applause, another one for Coach Roberts, our student leaders, and for Joe, Mr. Colon for facilitating.
Thank you. Awesome job, Coach.
So, believe it or not, that was about an hour. That concludes our session. Now that we're at the end of the session, you're gonna go with your first year mentors or your FYMs to dinner/discussion. So please look to your FYM and they'll lead you on out of here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great job.
Good stuff, man.